I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome and thank you all for coming out to the 4/20/2017 meeting of the Peoria Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm going to get started by taking roll. Commissioner Brian Patterson. Present. Commissioner Bill Lewis.
Present.
Commissioner Jay Outluski.
Present.
Commissioner Jeff Nelson.
Present.
Commissioner Mitch Bolnick.
Present.
Commissioner Clay Alsop and Commissioner Lee Strickman are both absent tonight. I'm going to read an opening statement. This commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed to the City Council to serve on the commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria and then forward our recommendations to the City Council. All hearings are conducted in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order and Rules for Procedures. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. In the interest of maintaining fair and efficient hearing, the Commission adheres to the following steps. Chairperson calls the case. Staff gives a brief report and recommendation. Applicant gives a presentation. Opposition and support gives testimony, generally limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Applicant may give rebuttal. Commission discusses and makes decision. Anyone wishing to speak must complete a speaker's request form and hand it to the planning assistant on my left, and be as brief as possible and do not repeat statements already made by others. Anyone wishing to protest a decision of the Commission public hearing item must request a second public hearing before the City Council. The request must be submitted in writing to the Planning and Community Development Department within 10 days after the Commission's hearing. All Commission recommendations on public hearing items move forward to a regular City Council meeting. The City Council will then act on the recommendation of the Commission. They may concur with the decision, modify it, or overturn it. We welcome citizens' comments, and as fellow citizens of Peoria, we thank you in advance for your participation. So right now, this will be the final call to submit speaker request forms. If anyone wishes to speak, please fill out a speaker form and provide it to the staff seated on my left at the end of the dais. First up, we will consider the consent agenda. The consent agenda is for items that are routine in nature and consist of, you have to forgive me, I had all this stuff written down. It's still on my desk at work. It consists of 3 items tonight. First item up is disposition of absence, 1C. That is discussion and possible action to approve or excuse the absences of Commissioners Lee Strickman and Jay Outluski from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on March 16th, 2017. Item 2C are the minutes. Discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on March 16th of 2017. And the third item is 3C. That is CU 17-01, Bubba's 33 Restaurant, Outdoor Dining and Conditional Use Permit. A request for a conditional use permit to allow 975 square foot outdoor dining area for a new restaurant, Bubba's 33, located at 16100 North Arrowhead Fountain Center Drive within P83. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lewis.
I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, having a motion and a second, please vote on the consent agenda.
Just try to get Steve.
Okay. Still learning computer items up here as well. Okay, moving on, we have one item on the agenda tonight under new business. That is item 4R. That's for CU 16-0032, Divine River Healing Medical Marijuana Dispensary. A request for a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a medical marijuana dispensary in Suite 107 of the Pleasant Promenade Retail Center located at 20340 North Lake Pleasant Road. Staff, could you please give your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Before Melissa starts with the presentation tonight on the actual item, I wanted to give you just a little bit of background on medical marijuana in Arizona. So Prop 203, the Medical Marijuana Act, was passed by the voters of Arizona in the fall of 2010. And that act authorized the use, the sale, and the cultivation of medical marijuana in Arizona. And it named Arizona Department of Health Services, or DHS, the regulatory agency. DHS would be responsible for adopting and enforcing all administrative rules. They would be responsible for registering qualified patients and caregivers, and the issuance of dispensary and cultivation certificates. The distribution of these certificates was determined by the Community Health Analysis Areas, or CHAAs. And in Arizona, there's 126 of them, as shown here on the map. And the dispensaries would be permitted at a ratio of 1 dispensary per 10 traditional pharmacies. The act also granted the cities the reasonable zoning authority. And now what reasonable means in this context is really that we can regulate the land use, but we can't zone them out of the city. We can't require so much separation that it has the effect of zoning them out of the city, for example. So they are a permitted use. We cannot disallow them. We can only determine qualifying criteria for a site. So in 2011, the City Council adopted the Medical Marijuana Ordinance that regulated the placement of dispensaries. And some of the criteria listed here are within the ordinance. So it requires an issuance of a conditional use permit. That's why we're here tonight for this request. It was restricted to specific commercial zones. There was separation requirements. You can see in the table to the right. From another dispensary, you had to be separated by a half mile. Daycares and schools, 1,000 feet. Same for preschools, bars, taverns, lounges, liquor stores, adult uses, substance abuse centers. And then residential zoning properties, or residentially zoned property rather, was 500 feet. The ordinance also requires a security plan that's approved by the City of Peoria Police Department, and also requires a disposal plan for byproduct remnants so that scrap products or leftovers of the for sale product don't wind up in publicly accessible trash cans. There's operational limitations. There's many. We have in our zoning ordinance. For example, hours of operations, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Those are the maximum operating hours. Cultivation is prohibited. Delivery services, drive-through services and sales are prohibited. Alcoholic beverages cannot be sold, stored, or distributed on the property. Dispensary shall not have outdoor seating, but there must be adequate indoor seating to prevent loitering. The visual access into the business should be maintained at all times, especially during hours of operation when lighting must be adequate and appropriate. The consumption of marijuana or products containing marijuana cannot occur on site. And any tenant improvement plans to a suite or a building must include proper ventilation, air filtration, and design standards that are to ensure compatibility with adjacent suites within the building. And then additionally, there's a conditional use permit expiration, which is consistent with all of our conditional use permits, that if there's no certificate or there's no operation within 18 months, they will be expired. We have one location currently in operation. That's a photo of it there on the right. It's Natural Selections at 91st Avenue in Peoria. We have approvals. The conditional use permits were granted for 2 additional locations, one at 91st Avenue and Olive, and the other roughly 91st Avenue and Northern. Those are still under review. They have not begun operations yet. So we have site plans, design review, and for the one at 91st and Olive. We don't have anything for the other location yet. So last year, the Arizona Department of Health Services, they reassessed their distribution and the number of possible dispensaries statewide. You remember earlier I mentioned they were the ratio was 1 to 10 traditional pharmacies was the ratio that they would issue certificates. Well, the number of pharmacies has increased, resulting in an allowance for up to 31 new dispensaries statewide. The Department of Health Services is considering applications and issuing certificates based on the agency's prioritization criteria. And part of that consideration on the state level is that local zoning clearance must be provided or must be gained at the time of issuance. So that's where the conditional use permit in Peoria establishes zoning clearance. And then, once again, the final determination is to be made by the state. We can issue the CUP, but the process continues. Once the CUP has been issued, they still have to get the certificate from the state. So in summary, just a kind of a division of responsibilities in this process. The Department of Health Services, they're responsible for the administration and the enforcement of the Medical Marijuana Act, and they're responsible for the number and the issuance of and transfer of certificates overall. The city, on the other hand, is really responsible just for the regulation of the land use and establishing qualifying sites. And that's, again, why we're here this evening. With that, I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. So Adam's given a great introduction to the general topic of the dispensaries to kind of get you up to speed with what we'll be discussing this evening. The specific site that is in question has been applied for by Curtis Devine for Divine River Healing, and he's requesting a conditional use permit for a dispensary to be located on Lake Pleasant Road, as you can see in the northwest corner of Lake Pleasant and Beardsley. This is an existing suite, and they're looking to obtain that conditional use permit to operate within the commercial center there. The property is located in the C2 zoning district, which is our most common commercial zoning district, where commercial shopping centers and retail and service uses are typically located. As you can see there. The CUP, as stated, is required in the C2 zoning district. Some of the nearby uses include a pizza restaurant and bank among the adjacent tenants in the same building. In addition, to the north, there is a medical office plaza. To the south, there is a Walgreens pharmacy. To the east, across Lake Pleasant Road, is another commercial shopping center that contains a Bashas' grocery store, among other tenants. And to the west, there is vacant undeveloped property. A little bit farther to the west of that vacant site, there's an existing mini storage location. So Divine River Healing is proposing to adhere to the zoning ordinance operation limits on dispensaries, as noted by Adam. Includes the hours of operation, business activities on the site, as well as site security standards, including site security standards such as the use of cameras, lighting, and a security guard. Their business will be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. in accordance with the zoning ordinance. The security plan has been approved by the Peoria Police Department, as mentioned, with cameras, security lighting, as well as on-site security guard, who will be posted by the entrance during business hours. He'll be able to ensure that appropriate customer behavior is maintained, including no consumption of marijuana products on the premises. The business plan for this use expects to have approximately 50 patients per day. Patients are generally in the facility for short duration, 10 minutes or so, so this is a limited time. It's not something that they'd be spending hours in the store for. There would be no growing or cultivation on site. That's not permitted in our commercial districts, and no consumption of the products would be on the premises. As noted, they have provided sufficient seating in their waiting area for patients waiting for service to avoid any loitering outside of the facility, which would not be permitted. In addition to meeting the business characteristics for this use, the site also is in conformance with the zoning ordinance requirements, including separation. So the applicant has provided a list of existing uses that are located within 1,000 feet of the suite to ensure that it meets all of the separation criteria. The site does and is over the half-mile distance from other dispensaries. It's actually over 6 miles from the nearest dispensary. The site's also greater than 1,000 feet away from all child daycares, preschools, public, charter, and private schools. The closest school is Park Ridge Elementary to the east, and that's over 1,500 feet away. In addition, there are no retail liquor stores, bars, adult uses, substance abuse treatment centers, or state local alcohol reception centers anywhere within the vicinity of this project. In addition, the closest residentially zoned property is located more than 500 feet away to the south in Sun City across Beardsley Road. And this image provides a bit of a close-up so that you can see in greater detail the location of the site in proximity to some of the closest uses. The inner white circle is a 500-foot radius, and the red circle provides a 1,000-foot radius. So you can see within the immediate vicinity, you have commercial uses, vacant property, mini storage, and well outside of the required buffers, we do have residential uses across the road. In accordance with the City of Peoria zoning ordinance requirements, notification was provided. This included a notice of application postcard and notice of hearing postcards mailed to property owners within a 600-foot radius, as well as HOAs located within 1 mile of the property. The site was also posted in accordance with our requirements. After notice of application was provided, there was opposition received from a resident within the first 21 days after application. As a result, a neighborhood meeting was required. The neighborhood meeting was held in February, and at that meeting there were 27 members of the public in attendance. The applicant did provide a sign-in sheet. Not all members of the public attending chose to sign in, however. At that meeting there were a number of concerns as well as positive feedback that was received. These are detailed in the citizen participation plan, and as well some of the items that came up will be discussed in just a moment. In addition to the neighborhood meeting, there's also been a number of items of feedback received since then. You can see at your in front of you, you've received emails. We have received 10 emails in support of the case, as well as 3 emails in opposition to the case since the time of the neighborhood meeting. In addition, there were 8 phone calls received, 7 in opposition, and 1 in support. In addition, some of the emails do indicate support from multiple individuals representing the views of several people in one message. And the detailed, as I said, those information has been provided at your desk as they were received since the time of printing of the P&Z packet, and they didn't make it into the packet itself. At the neighborhood meeting, some of the citizen concerns fell into 3 basic categories. The first being safety and security. As a result of staff's analysis, we found that the security plan has been reviewed and approved by the police department in accordance with our zoning procedures. It included lighting, personnel, and camera provisions. Other concerns were related to proximity of the proposed site to the elementary school, adjacent or nearby residential developments, and senior living or senior housing facilities. The site does meet all zoning ordinance provisions for separation, including the separation from schools, residential zoning, and other similar uses. Some folks also mentioned that they simply did not want the use in their neighborhood. However, as mentioned, this is a state law has been passed to allow medical marijuana dispensaries, and the City of Peoria cannot exclude them from our zoning. As a result, our zoning ordinance provides regulations and limitations, and this site does meet the regulations provided by the zoning ordinance. As a result, staff has found that the use is a permitted conditional use within the zoning district on which the property is located. It meets all locational provisions and development standards for this use. In addition, it will not be materially detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the surrounding neighborhood. And as a result, staff would recommend that the Commission approve case CU 16-0032, subject to the conditions found in the staff report. With that, I'd take any questions you may have.
Okay, are there any questions or comments to the staff from the Commission? Commissioner Bolnick.
Thank you. We recently approved, and you mentioned them, the 2 other ones. Is Peoria only able to add 2 more? So this is a 3rd, and so only 2 of them are going to end up actually going up. Is that a true statement?
Commissioner Bolnick, the DHS regulations do allow for the transfer of licenses among the allowed dispensary licenses that they grant. So their regulations initially allowed 1 per CHA or community health analysis area. At this point, they have allowed for the transfer of licenses from among the group. So I believe that 2 of the other recently approved CUPs were for transfer of license that was already in existence. Basically, they had a dispensary elsewhere within the county or the state, and that dispensary is now transferring to Peoria. So we do have the limitations in terms of separation. So we may have additional dispensaries that meet the provisions of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm aware the Peoria Police Department reviewed this, didn't have any issues with it. And looking at the site we have currently at, I think you said 91st Avenue in Peoria, we have a high school near there, the Peoria Accelerated High School. Are we aware of any issues? 'Cause I know that was one of the concerns of residents about this being, although it's outside the 1,000-foot buffer, it's near a school. Have we had any issues between that operating dispensary and that high school? Any problems that police have told us about?
Commissioner Nelson, we have checked with the police department prior to the 2 most recent conditional use permits for dispensaries to determine if there had been any track record of that use being problematic. They indicated that it has not, and that it in no way has created an increase in crime or otherwise created a hot spot for them.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was a question that came up at one of our previous hearings about a medical marijuana dispensary, and I was wondering if you could just answer it again for us. Right now, when you show on the map that none of those other businesses that are prohibited from being within 1,000 feet are there, such as a bar or liquor establishment, that sort of thing, if one wants to now come in there within 1,000 feet of this, should this be approved, how would the city handle that application?
Sure. Commissioner Lewis, if it is a use that does not have a separation requirement from a dispensary, it would be allowed to operate or locate there. However, the dispensary could continue to operate based on if this conditional use permit is approved, they could continue to operate. Should they cease to operate and the conditional use permit be void based on a lapse in use for the duration, at that point a new dispensary could not come in. But both uses could continue to operate if there were, they would not be pushed out by a new use.
So it doesn't work both ways.
Correct. There are uses. So, for instance, if there were another use that wanted to locate that didn't have limitations, such as a school could go in within the separation requirement. They would be allowed to do so, but they would not stop this use from operating.
That would be their choice, though.
Correct.
To do so. Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff from the commission? Commissioner Bowling.
So that just led a question to my mind. So, but if a bar went in, which is something that can't be there right now, that would not be allowed to go in there. Even though a bar could go in there, there's no restriction on a bar, or is it both ways in both regs for bars and the medical marijuana?
Commissioner Bolnick, I think we have a quick check to verify. I don't recall a separation for bars from dispensaries. The bars are limited from locating in proximity to several other uses. So they would still have to meet those provisions, but I don't believe that they are restricted from locating in proximity to dispensaries.
Just to add, that is correct. The separation that a bar has is 200 feet from a residential district, but there's no separation from a bar to a dispensary. But as Melissa indicated, a dispensary has separation requirements from various uses, so they don't work the opposite way.
Okay. Any other questions for the staff from the commission? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is the applicant present? Would you like to speak?
Please.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
For the record. For the record, my name is Larry Lazarus. My office is at 420 West Roosevelt, Phoenix, Arizona. I would like to, first of all, thank the Planning Department staff for a thorough staff report and the recommendation for approval. We are agreeable to all of the conditions that have been specified in the staff report. Because the staff report has been so thorough, I'm going to try and keep my comments brief. Before I begin, I would like to introduce Sarah Pressler, who is on my left, standing up right now. She will be one of the owners and operators of the dispensary. Sarah is a former two-term mayor of Flagstaff and a licensed attorney in Arizona. She served 4 years as CEO of a nonprofit corporation and has been an active community volunteer for 20 years. It's been my pleasure working with Sarah and her partner, Curtis Devine, who was not able to attend tonight's meeting. Curtis manages and owns two large cultivation facilities and 2 dispensaries in Arizona, in Mojave Valley, in his hometown. These have been operated without incident, without any problems, and he's operated a dispensary in Phoenix for over a year. Recently had its 1-year review, and there has been no problems and no issues as it relates to those. Curtis has been for 15 years in the construction management industry, and he has been in the medical marijuana business for about 4 years. I just want to make a brief general statement before I get into the detail. Medical marijuana is an appropriate and oftentimes preferential treatment for people who have diseases within our communities, including your community. People with epilepsy, cancer, chronic pain. It is an appropriate use if done appropriately, if properly it's prescribed and done at the proper location. And that's why you have the ordinances that you have, is to assure yourselves that it is in the proper location. With that, and I think it's very important to understand that there is a community need here. With that, let me talk to you a little bit about the proposed location. The dispensary is to be located, as was indicated, on at the Pleasant Promenade Retail Center at the northwest corner of Lake Pleasant and Beardsley Road. It's in Suite 7 of an inline retail use. Next slide. As noted by the planning staff, the site meets all of the criteria and distance requirements for locating the medical marijuana facility. That's the same slide that the staff used. And again, noted by staff, there is appropriate vehicular access, as you can see, along Lake Pleasant Road, 2 places, as well as along Beardsley. If you take a look at where the site is, in that particular area, in the north portion of that property, there's over 100 parking spaces accommodating those particular tenants. So there is sufficient parking. Taking a look at the building elevations, for those not familiar with this promenade center, the Pleasant Promenade Center, these elevations illustrate the architectural elements there. It's a well-kept, very attractive center. Floor plan itself, the staff showed just a little while ago and went into some detail. I do want to point out a couple things. The only access is from the door that's on the left. That's the only public access going into the center and into the patient area. People walking in there must check into the area that shows security and reception. They cannot go into the locked area to the right until such time as a sales associate remains with them, and they can't get into that area unless they have a prescription and unless they are a patient card holder that has been issued by the state of Arizona. It is a secured area. The interior of another dispensary I'm going to show you real quick. This is a dispensary that is operated by my client, and the same kind of interior, high-quality interior, is going to occur at this dispensary as well. As far as operations and security goes, I just want to point out that there is on-site security, as we noted. There's a 24/7 alarm emergency monitoring services. There's security cameras on both inside and outside, and you'll see the blue ones are on the inside. There are 2 on the outside that secure the area, so there's no loitering in the area as well. Those videos are continuous, and they will be held for 60 days so that if the state or the police department or anybody else needs access to that information, they will have it. And as I said, only patients with Arizona Department of Health Services patient cards can get in. I want to talk to you a little bit about our neighborhood outreach. It has been extensive. Some of the information that you got was right after the neighborhood meeting, and there was a lot of people there who initially were opposed to medical marijuana because of the issues that people have about not understanding to a great degree how secure these areas are. For the past couple of months, we've had, since the neighborhood meeting, we had a team out there that has spent about 120 hours of conversations with 46 separate households in Ventani Lakes and Vista Montana communities and 35 small businesses in the area. The team has had efforts to connect and listen to those people in that area. And we now have several support letters from people that were residents as well as businesses. As a matter of fact, 14 of the 16 people who initially opposed it, who indicated that, are now supporting it. And we have some of them here today who have asked to attend this meeting. So I'm going to allow them to do so rather than elaborate unless you have any other questions.
So I think I heard you say it, but you are in agreement with staff recommendations?
That's correct.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments of the applicant? Commissioner Nelson.
Sorry about that. So Lazarus, just a quick question. So will this shop sell any smoking supplies? So if somebody came in and just wanted to buy some paraphernalia of some sort, do they still have to have the medical marijuana card to get back there, or is there a front area where they could buy just the supplies if they didn't want to buy marijuana?
I'm going to have Sarah Pressler stand.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Sarah Pressler, and I'm one of the directors of the dispensary that holds the certificate for the community health analysis area. To answer your question, Commissioner Nelson, is that correct?
Correct.
The dispensary is obligated to provide patient education and chooses to carry a very limited amount of methods of administration in order to administer those products. However, if you, for example, Mr. Nelson, came into our dispensary and you were not a medical marijuana patient, but you wanted to purchase a rolling paper or a pipe to administer the medication, we would refuse you service into the locked area. We also would not provide the product to you in the center lobby area. We would refer you to maybe a neighboring smoke shop or another vendor in the community that could provide you those services. So the services that we provide from the locked space in the dispensary back are only for patients that hold that medical marijuana Arizona Department of Health Services patient card, including any supplies or methods of administration.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I knew she could answer that better than I could. So.
We have any other questions of the applicant? Okay. We have several speaker request forms to consider. Looks like they, for the most part, are in favor. So I'm going to call you down to the podium. When I do so, please state your name and address for the record. First one up is Donald Beck. And Mr. Beck, if you could please keep your comments to 3 minutes or under.
Yeah, it's going to be short. So I got to state my name. I'm Donald Beck. I just wanted to state that I'm in favor of the dispensary, and I believe it'll provide a few new jobs for the area, and I think it'll help better educate some of the patients in the area on the safe use of medical marijuana, and that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next request form we have is for Mitchell Diamond. Mr. Diamond, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Mitchell Diamond, 1310 Pima, Mesa, Arizona. Thank you for letting me to address you people today. Thanks. I just wanted to say that I am in favor of the Divine Dispensary. I'm a caregiver in Arizona, also have patients in Peoria. And as a caregiver, we find that it is very important that there are many locations for people to receive their medication. This particular one that we approve is in a very safe area, secure. It's close by to a lot of the resident card holders. And basically that's about it. It's important that we have it in the appropriate areas and that it is in a safe area. That was our two big points, and that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Diamond. Next, we have Stephanie Nelson. Yes, Ms. Nelson, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Thank you, Commissioner. Commission, my name is Stephanie Nelson. I am at 4507 East Campobello in Phoenix. I've been a volunteer, and I've been working on behalf of Divine Dispensary in the community. Once the community outreach meeting happened, we had some 28 individuals that came to that meeting or sent questions or comments into the city. So I've been working on the medical marijuana issue since 1994 when I lost my grandmother to cancer. I know how well it can work. So I worked for Divine and the group to work with all these neighborhood members. Had I don't even know how many meetings. We met at Coco's for breakfast about 8 times. I had face-to-face phone calls, literally 100-plus hours of communication. Most of the information was just misinformation. They didn't understand that the true medical use of marijuana, and once they did, they were absolutely in favor. So I have, there are 4 more people that are in the audience that are shy. I have 3 more additional letters that didn't get submitted. One of them had a work emergency. One of them wasn't feeling well because she's a medical marijuana patient and is having a hard day. And we have a shy one in the crowd here. So I'm going to submit these. I don't want to read through them unless you have, unless you need to. Sounds like everybody's in support. But all 3 of them are extensively in support of the dispensary. In addition, we met with small business owners in the area. Have a couple of pages of different business owners that have signed on, that have know where the location is, or either near the location or have business near the location, and are in full support. So I just wanted to submit those and answer any questions as far as the community outreach was concerned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we also have 2 speaker request forms. They do not wish to speak, but they are both in favor. One from Jennifer Huggins of Peoria, Arizona, and one from Barbara Lewandowski, I hope I got that right, from Peoria, Arizona as well. Does the applicant have any rebuttal or additional comments? No. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have any comments from the commissioners before we vote? Are you requesting?
I am.
Okay. Commissioner Nelson.
Just a comment. We have a lot of sometimes controversial things come before us, and it's been a while since we've seen the level of community outreach that you've done, and I just want to applaud you for that. Getting out there, meeting those neighbors, addressing their concerns, meeting with those business owners, addressing their concerns. I think that means a lot to us, me in particular, when you get out there and do that. So we really appreciate that outreach. So that was my comment.
Okay, Commissioner Atluski.
Yeah, I guess it's just a quick comment for us and staff. It's interesting that we can regulate how, when we put a new dispensary in location to other things, but down the road, if a bar wanted to go in next door, we would allow it. So I don't think we can overcome that necessarily, but it just hits me as odd that it goes one way, but we don't look at it the other way. So that's just a comment I had and a thought.
Commissioner Bolnick.
Just for emphasis, I want to echo those comments because it doesn't seem to make sense. There's got to be a reason it's one way. It should apply going both ways to me. And I don't know if there's something can be done, but I just make that comment.
Okay. Before I call for the vote, I also would like to add, I know there was a lot of commentary, both pro and con, for the dispensary, and for all those that took notice and took action to speak their mind about it. I hope you use that same passion to advocate for the funding of the school that you were referring to, and the concerns for the proximity to the dispensary. We seem to lose focus on the really important stuff like the lack of funding for our schools. Had to put that in there. With that, I'm going to call for the vote on, I need a motion on, first, on item 4R, CU 16-0032.
Mr. Commissioner.
Commissioner Lewis.
I move for approval of conditional use permit case CU 16-0032, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff's report.
Okay, do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Lewis, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. Please vote. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, next up we have the call to the public. Are there any comments from the public on non-agenda items? All right, seeing none, let's have reports from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Just a couple items. First, our next meeting will be May 18th at 6:30 in this location, the City Council chambers. And then next is this weekend, as you know, we're working on our general plan update. And this weekend we have an outreach opportunity at the Planet Palooza Earth Day Festival at West Wing Park. It's going to be from 5 to 8 in the evening at West Wing Park. Come by. There'll be a concert. There'll be some games and some displays for people to learn about the Planet Palooza event. But also there'll be an opportunity to get some input from our citizens with regards to the future of the city of Peoria. And then next week we kick off our workshop series. It's actually workshop 1. It's one workshop repeated 3 times. We have a north, central, and a southern location. First one will be here on City Hall campus at the Development Community Services Building in the Point of View conference room. It'll be from 6 to 8. Actually, all of them will be from 6 to 8. And then on the 25th, we'll be up at Sunrise Mountain Library, and the 26th at Copper Hills Church. That's in West Wing, in their lobby. And then on the 29th, we'll be at Peoria Sports Complex for the Sweets Confection and Dessert Expo. So again, an opportunity to come by, stop by the tent, and give us some feedback on the general plan. And on the right, you'll see a flyer. You have a hard copy of that, hopefully in front of you, and that gives you some ideas of what we're looking at during the workshop. So you're welcome to attend. Anyone watching, please attend. We can certainly use as much feedback as we can.
And one other item, and I promise we're not just going to eat dessert at the festival there. But the other thing I wanted to mention is we received some letters addressed to the Planning Commission. They're related to a zoning case that hasn't been in front of the Commission. So we'll go ahead and pass those out for you to take a look at. It's a zoning case that's very early in the process. You'll probably see it sometime, I would imagine, after the summer break, sometime this fall, I would imagine, just to make sure you have that. And with that, I believe that's it.
What was the date on the next meeting? I didn't quite catch that. The 18th. Okay. Okay, next up is reports from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Does any commissioner wish to make a report? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chairman. I had a chance to attend a redistricting meeting last week and hosted by the city clerk's office, and found it actually a lot more interesting than I thought I would. We have 5 very distinct redistricting maps, so I really encourage commissioners. I would assume we're still taking public input on those, or is that cut off now? Do we know?
Commissioner Nelson, I believe the second round of meetings on the redistricting were just concluded. That's going to be coming forward to council, and I'm not certain on the date. I can get that date to you if you like.
So it's pretty cool. You have an opportunity to go to the website and you can review the maps and say what you like or dislike about each one. So I'd encourage you to take a look at it and weigh in on that. I think we have a really knowledgeable commission here, and I think that input would be valuable. So, and then lastly, I just want to applaud the city staff for the creation of that wonderful flag. I got a chance to read the article and see the new flag. Pretty cool. Love it. I think it represents Peoria well. So hats off to you for the work you guys did on that.
Okay, thank you. And any other commissioners wish to present a report? I would encourage anybody watching and any members of the public that if they have the chance to get involved with the general plan, it is really, really good information. I plan on attending at least 2 of the workshops and listening to some of the community input into what their thoughts are. Seeing no other reports, call this meeting adjourned.